welcome to the Parsha Pairings with Jeff and Sherry. I'm Jeff Friedlander.
And I'm Sherry.
And we're glad you joined us. This week we begin our Parsha studies in the book of Leviticus. So we wanted to do this video as an overview of the entire book and give you a picture of it. Many people struggle with the book of Leviticus. In fact, many people don't even read the book of Leviticus because it seems so difficult and challenging. And they kind of feel like, well, that's really old. And that's for the Jews.
Irrelevant.
Yeah. And we don't believe that. We believe that it's not only relevant, but it has an incredible, poignant piece of our life that it will enrich us deeply. Now, the book's name is Leviticus. That comes actually from the Vulgate, which was a translation out of the Septuagint. The Septuagint translated Leviticus because it has to deal with the Levitical priesthood or with the tribe of Levi and who they were as the priest. The actual name of the book in the manuscripts is Torat Kohanim, which means instructions for the priest. And many people call it Vayikra, and Vayikra is kind of the popular name of it in the Hebrew world because that is the first word in the book, and that means called, summoned, or and he called, Vayikra. The reason that it's called these different terms is because the book deals extensively with the service that the Levites do to the people and what God is calling the people to. There's a lot of discussion in the book about the priest, but I would say that's not actually the theme of the book, Sherry. The theme of the book is a bigger idea than that, much bigger than just priest. In fact, if you read the cover to cover Leviticus, all 27 chapters, you're going to find one word used over and over and over. And you're going to hear a command based on that word over and over. And you'll trace every one of these instructions, all these commands, all these laws. And it's going to say, be holy as I am holy. The theme of this book is holiness. That's what it's all about. Yeshua in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, actually gives a long discourse, starting in near Matthew 4, but particularly Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And he gives a long discourse all about the Torah. He gives many laws. He gives touches on them. He talks about the commands of God. And in the middle of that, he kind of sums it all up in Matthew 5 and verse 48. And he says, therefore, be perfect or be holy as I am holy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's also important to understand the placement of where the book is in the Torah scroll.
Yeah.
We've just ended the book of Exodus, which, obviously tells the story of them coming out of Egypt. It tells of the 40 years in the desert. And here, or not the 40 years yet, the beginning of this 40 years. And we just got through reading in Exodus about the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle, and all the details that went along with that. We ended reading about the details of the robes and the clothing of these priests. And now we're moving into God's made this covenant. He's appointed this people. He's appointed now priests and Levitical rulers over them. And now he's going to give the system of how he's going to deal with people. Here's the law, but here's how you deal with it.
And that's the reality of what this is. This book is third book in the Torah. It's right in the middle between Genesis, which is the foundation of all the universe and setting up a people for God. Exodus, which brings out the nation of God. In Numbers, they'll get on the road again. The book of Leviticus they don't leave. They're at Mount Sinai the entire time this book happens. But after Leviticus, in Numbers, they get on the road again, and that's 39 years in Numbers that we watch the journey. And Deuteronomy is the last 30 days. So this book's just right there. It's stating for us, okay, here's what I want you to do. Here's how you're going to live. And that's what this book's really about.
It's almost like reading, if you read Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers together as if it's one book.
Yeah.
You're in the climax right now of the book. This is the middle part of the book that kind of is bringing both pieces together.
Yeah, let me give you a couple things to think through as we kind of look. I'm going to go through a few of the chapters, just kind of give you a big idea. And then in that, it'll kind of make sense how this thing's laid out. The first 7 chapters of the book deal with the types of offerings and sacrifices that are to be brought out. Chapters 8 through 10 deal with the ordination of the Aaronic priesthood and the Levitical priest and what their performance in the sanctuary is going to be like. Chapter 10 shows us when you disobey the priesthood, how grave it is with the tragic story of the death of Aaron's sons. Chapter 11 digs into the biblical diet. What are the biblical laws surrounding food and how we're to eat? And then chapters 12 through 15 get into this beautiful section called purity. Now, it's an interesting part. One of the explanations the ancients had in understanding purity, they looked at it as purity and holiness were very similar to one another, although there are some differences. There was some similarities. And purity was about how you were required to approach God, whereas holiness deals a little bit more in the sin category. Purity dealt with clean and unclean, and it dealt with approaching God. And in these chapters, we see that no one could come to God as dirty or impure. That's not the same as bad or good or evil or clean or whatever. The reason this becomes so big in this idea is that God has now changed locations. And this is something I hope you'll understand and grasp. Up until this time, prior to the book of Leviticus, God himself had not been on the earth in any big sense of an involvement since the garden. He had appeared a few times, like he appeared to Abraham, came and talked to him. He had appeared to Jacob. He had done some visions and done some conversations, right, here and there. But he had not really been. He was above, kind of outside, and making an entrance here and there. That's about to change.
Yeah.
On Mount Sinai, he's at the top outside the mountain. As Sherry said, Exodus, he develops a house for himself and a priesthood for himself and a people for himself. And now he's coming down. He's going to now dwell on the earth. I mean, he's God, so he's everywhere. It's not like an individual just popped into the earth. He's all over, right? But he is now going to make a presence on the earth continually with the people. This has not been done since the garden, when he walked with Adam and Eve.
And what is so unique about that is you also have to understand the perspective of God pulled Israel out of the nations, where there's pagan worship.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this was a foreign idea to worship a deity.
Yes.
Their deities, though, were obviously not Echad, the one true God. And their deities were not to be approached in the way that we are to approach our God.
Yeah.
And so everything we read about, even from the Mishkan to the sacrificial system to the priesthood, these are not new or unknown concepts.
Right.
They're things you could see in the nations, but they're not like the nations. And God is defining, this is how you are to worship me, not like the other gods, not like the other nations. I'm different.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in these laws, these purity laws and this holiness code that we'll talk about, God is saying, since I'm going to be on the earth with you, I'm going to be traveling with you, I'm going to be around you, there is a certain way that you must approach me in order to be in my presence. And think about that. That's not sectarian, that's safety.
Right.
You can't touch a hot stove without getting burnt. You're not coming to the holy, immense, powerful, pure God without dying unless you come in the way that he makes a path for you. So he's creating for the people a safe mechanism for them to be able to be in the presence of God. And we're going to examine that all through this book. And we're going to see all the tie-ins to Yeshua, to the New Testament, and to our lives today. The approach is not different in the sense of principle, although some methods may be different. You're going to find as we go through this book, multiple places where you go, why didn't I see that before? The book of Leviticus is powerful. Now, most people do struggle with this because it's either been taught as old law for the Jews or desert dwellers, or it's just difficult to do. But I would argue that's not the case at all. In fact, I would argue it's the opposite. The book lays out these laws, these cares, and if we pay attention to them, what we'll find is a way for us to draw near to God, which we're going to talk about in the next video, the first video of this Parsha, of drawing near to God, where our strength will come from God to help us to walk out. So God is going to be on the earth. He's changed his location, and now the people have to be holy. They have to be set apart. Although Yeshua fulfilled the law of sin and death, it doesn't mean that our bodies and our physical flesh is still not fighting, and we still have to deal with things on the earth. In eternity, Yeshua's fullness of fulfilling that law, we won't have a problem on approaching God, because It's over at that point.
Right.
But approaching God today, even with Yeshua, we still have a flesh, and there is a difference. And that's part of what we're going to learn in these chapters, particularly, chapters 12 through 15. Chapter 16 still deals with the holy place of God, making it holy. And then it also helps us to give the details to what becomes the national atonement sacrifices for Yom Kippur. And we'll get into that when we get there. Chapters 17 through 26 lay out what has been termed by historians, scholars, sages, Bible teachers as the holiness code.
Yeah.
In those chapters, we deal with the term holiness over and over and over and over, and you'll see multiple rules and laws that are designed to say, this is what separates you from everybody else. Mm-hmm. This is what separates you unto me.
Right.
And if you keep that in your mind when we go through a lot of these specific laws, you're going to realize that's not a bad idea. This makes me different than the world, and it draws me to God. That's a good thing.
Right.
It's not painful. Chapter 19 deals specifically with the most famous probably saying in the book. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? That's kind of the big one. Chapter 23 lays out all of the Moedim, the appointed times of the Lord. And chapters 24 through 27 continue in the holiness idea specific to the priest, the sanctuary, and it gets into private property, land, money, debt, all those things as well. Finally, the primary kind of goal of this book as a theme of holiness is for us to realize that the people of God are called the Edah, or the community of God.
Yeah.
And God is saying in Leviticus, I've brought you out of Egypt. You are now a nation. That's a community of followers.
Right.
You are part of my family now. And we're going to go together into this land. And we're going to example for the entire world how people on earth can be in community with each other and with God.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal of Leviticus. So if you read Leviticus with the right attitude, you'll find out the body of Messiah could become a community of faith together and connected to God himself.
That's good. But
Right.
I hope you will
Anything
enjoy our studies on Leviticus. Hopefully it will take some of the difficult passages away and some of the astigmatisms and the why am I reading this? And it'll be able to be applicable to your life.
All right. So this book is rich in life. It's rich in meaning, and we're looking forward to sharing with you. And we'll go through each parsha. We'll try to pick out, and we won't avoid the tougher ones. There's some laws in here that confuse people and get tough. We will dig into those too and help you to see what those are all about. So until next time, God bless you and shalom.
Shalom.